matchups. In the middle seat, Peter Tubergen. Of course, he's playing Affinity. He's playing against Todd Stevens on black-green mid-range. And up in the top seat, Daniel Miller is playing Miracles. He's against Jody Kieth on lands.
Tim Madsen.
Could see any number of these going different ways, actually. The black-green deck, normally, Jund Thoughtseize Time Wave decks are okay against Affinity, but it's because of their third color.
Yeah, they have Lingering Souls or Kolaghan's Command, and he's just casting green and black cards.
So we start out here in our standard match, just some lands traded here. It's going to be first play of the game from Ted Felicetti. It's going to be Merfolk Branchwalker, revealing the Merfolk Lord on top of the deck. Okay, let's walk through some of the Merfolk we have in this deck. Silvergill Adept, Metallic Mimic, Jadeborn Pioneer, that's the one, the 2/2 makes a hexproof, Kumena's Speaker, Merfolk Branchwalker, and Merfolk Mistbender, Mistbender being the Lord, Kumena, and then Deeproot Elite.
Anyone in the Legacy event not have a token packet?
Moment of Craving from Jim shoots down the first Merfolk here.
I think that in this matchup, Jungleborn Pioneer is actually Felicetti's best card.
Because the hexproof one?
Yeah, it's still Silvergill Adept, I guess, but Jungleborn Pioneer is the one that might actually close the game.
Well, there's Silvergill Adept on top. Another Merfolk Branchwalker was cast by Felicetti, getting himself a 3/2. Jim will cycle a land.
I've played a little bit with this Merfolk deck, a few matches on Magic Online before I sold it all.
Okay, well, sounds like you really like this one.
And Merfolk Branchwalker is this card that looks like it's more copies of Silvergill Adept. The difference is Jim Davis is playing some Essence Scatters, and the Branchwalker is never going to get those out. But Essence Scatter and Silvergill Adept, if Jim has it, you're going to want to pull the trigger there.
Yeah, and he will do that, so no bonus card for Ted. He did have to show the Merfolk Mistbender. Jim already knew that one was there from an earlier Explore. But Jim took a hit of 3. Notice he only goes to 19. Those moments of craving are going to add up, especially when they're paired against Vraska's Contempts.
Right. Though notably, certainly in the main deck, Jim doesn't have any kind of sweeper effect, and in Standard doesn't really have much in the way for blue-black. You'd have to be playing like Bontu's Last Reckoning. So he's going to be one-for-oneing all of the plays from the Merfolk deck here.
Fatal Push clears down the board. Ted makes a second Silvergill Adept. This one actually gets him a card. But we do look at Jim's hand, and it is lining up exactly how he would like it. His last 3 cards are Glimmer of Genius, Fatal Push, and Torrential Gearhulk.
Yep.
Your draft is ready.
And then for Jim, once he gets this Gearhulk down, that's going to be a huge problem for Felicetti. Of course, the blue-green Merfolk, you don't have removal spells. What they have is 4 copies of Unsummon.
Ew.
I don't want to unsummon Torrential Gearhulk.
Yeah, I'm out. And unlike modern Merfolk, they don't actually have Island Walk plus Spreading Seas or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, when you see a card like Merfolk Mistbinder, you think that's kind of exciting. We have a Lord, it costs 2 mana, and it's probably an upgrade for the modern deck, but in Standard, it's just another creature that dies to Fatal Push. It's not as good as drawing Silvergill Adept.
All right, so for the moment, we're going to have that face-down card represent energy, though we will get one of those Ba tokens as soon as we can.
You see Jim scrying here. Looks like a couple lands on the top. One of those going to the bottom. Picks up Basic Swamp. Wants his 6th land to cast a Torrential Gearhulk. And from 19, Jim starts casting Gearhulks. He should be able to run away with this game.
Yeah, things look good here. Draws for turn. See if he actually has land 6. Looks like he does with the Swamp.
Yeah, scry that one to the top. That's a good one to have.
Looks like 2 Fatal Pushes, a Torrential Gearhulk. Yeah, he'll just cast the Gearhulk. Flashes back a Glimmer.
That's the ideal target.
I really like Jim's deck right now. This is exactly what I want to be doing in Standard.
Yeah, this looks like a strong build, certainly well positioned, and you can beat the spectrum of decks as well. You're very good against this creature beatdown deck. You're very good in the Control Mirror.
Ooh, another Torrential Gearhulk in the top 2.
Yeah, take that.
Don't mind if I do this, and there's an Essence Scatter next to it.
The only thing he might want over a Torrential Gearhulk would be a Scarab God or a Search for Escanta.
And you see Ted is in the position where he knows Gearhulk might be there, but because his deck, he's mentioned, is so light on removal, he actually just didn't respect it on that attack. He swung into it more along the line of, hey, if you just have these curve of kill spells into Gearhulk, I'm not really going to play against it anyway.
Right. couple things that Ted has that can kind of punch through a control deck. There's 2 main deck Nissa Steward elements that can generate some card advantage, and 2 Deeproot Waters. Landing Deeproot Waters would be a pretty big win, though at this point in the game, Jim is pulling ahead.
Yeah, Jim drawing another Glimmer there, so his hand is now an Essence Scatter, a Glimmer of Genius, 2 Fatal Pushes, and another Gear Hulk. I'm not sure that Ted can punch through all of that.
Right. Jim's deck also features 4 copies of Disallow. When we get to this stage in the game, it's a lot harder for Ted to resolve much of anything.
Metallic Mimic shot down by Fatal Push, and it's the Merfolk Branchwalker, copy number 3. Shows Unsummon on top. I can't imagine Ted wants that.
Yeah, that's going to go in the graveyard.
Now here is the Mistbinder. He'll swing. Mistbinder gets hit by a second Fatal Push. Jim takes 2, goes to 17, and is going to Glimmer again.
Jim's life total is so high.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, it's.
This is not the texture of a game that this deck realistically can lose.
Yeah, looks like a land and a Vraska's Contempt. Yeah, Jim will take both those.
Yep, these are fine.
When your opponent keeps casting Glimmer and tops consecutive times from this board, that's really
the hope
bad
is
sign.
that they have mistakenly left something that they actually don't want on top. That's not going to be the case for Jim Davis.
No, now has 2 Vraska's Contempts in hand. And has 2 Contempts, an Essence Scatter, a Gear Hulk,
Just a couple quick things before we get started.
a Censor.
We are going to be doing.
Amusingly, Censor still
Yeah,
plays.
Mistbinder, another
Each
Mistbinder.
round will be 50 minutes.
Yeah, it looks like he could convert the Censor.
But with 7 mana available, I think he's lining up just Gear Hulk Fatal Push. Just still a really good turn for Jim.
Sure, casts Torrential Gear Hulk here.
The Censor probably just still plays on the following turn.
On this monitor right here that I'm pointing at currently.
If Ted's not double spelling, he's not getting out of this situation.
No.
In front of me.
Ted down to 10. I mean, Jim has lethal attacks now, too. Jim's going to Fatal Push down a Mistbinder, then he cycles the Censor. Swings. It's a lethal attack, so a chump block from Ted. He'll take 5, go to 5.
You have 50 minutes. You may begin.
A pass from Jim. 2 Vraska's Contempts and an Essence Scatter. There's no way out of this for Ted. He'll try to cast Kumena. That'll get hit by Essence Scatter, and we're on to the second game. So Jim Davis on blue-black control, a powerful showing there. The result never felt in question.
No, certainly not. And Commander's this kind of card that can break through in a creature mirror, but when all of your other merfolk are getting hit by removal spells, it's really hard to get anything going with that.
All right, now Ted's going to fight back, and he's going to fight back in a big way. We'll talk about that when we come back with Game 2 of this match.
Go.
So welcome back. We have another game result here for you while we were on break. Over on the Legacy match, Daniel Miller playing Miracles, up 1-0 on Jody Kieth. You know, this is the second time we've seen Miracles versus Lands just kind of in the background on Legacy table. Both times, Miracles has actually come out on top. Is that what you'd expect in this matchup?
Miracles certainly has the tools more than a lot of other Legacy decks. You have a lot of answers to the Merit Lage combo. You have a lot of basic lands, so you're difficult to wasteland. You don't really care about punishing fire, so there is a lot to like about the blue-white side of the matchup.
All right. So we look at the sideboards for the players. I mentioned that Ted Felicetti has a lot going on. Let's walk through his sideboard.
Yeah, so we have 3 copies of Essence Scatters, 3 Negates, 3 Shaper Sanctuaries. That's the big one.
Wow, yeah.
2 Aethersphere Harvester, 2 Naturalize, and 2 Tempest Caller. So for sure, bringing in all those Shaper Sanctuaries, that card really beats up on these Fatal Push heavy kind of strategies. And then you can go for either or both of Essence Scatter and Negate. You kind of want Negate for Torrential Gearhulk, not a huge number of them. Also, it's the Scarab God. Or Essence Scatter, rather. And then the Negates for Vraska's Contempt, that's fine. It doesn't trade very well on mana with a lot of what Jim is doing, and the Shaper Sanctuary kind of covers that anyway.
So 2-0, we have our first match finished. It's on the middle table. Peter Tubergen, a easy win there in Modern. It's going to put extra pressure on Jim Davis to close this one out.
Yeah, for Stevens' black-green deck, he's kind of saying he wants to play Field of Ruin, and he's missing on a lot of good cards for some of these matchups.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to target your Jund deck. So, you know, generally when you look at Jund, you're asking whether you want to play... I'm going to say like Jund is like a Thoughtseize Tarmogoyf deck. You can play red, and that will give you some extra game against the combo decks. You can play white, and that will give you Obzon, which gives you extra game against the fair decks. Or you can play straight black-green, which usually gives you extra game against the big mana decks.
Right.
It's a lot of those 3 choices to beat fair, unfair, or big mana. Big mana is I think the smallest target, so it's a really niche call to play straight black-green.
Right, yeah, it's a metagame call. It's a narrow target, but it is a very difficult matchups for the other builds of the deck.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's never the right choice, but it certainly is the one that I think is least often the right choice.
Right.
But then, of course, you're going to play it, and then you hit something like Affinity, and you really wish you were one of the other 2 versions.
Yeah. You still have game against Affinity, but not nearly as much.
Yeah, that might be the matchup where you're hurt the most by not having a 3rd color.
Yeah.
All right, game number 2 is underway. Ted Felicetti going to be on the play. Starts off on Woodland Stream. Jim a tap land of his own. I really am interested in these Shaper Sanctuaries. We saw Jim play removal spells up and down the curve, all the way into Gearhulk last game. Put 1 Shaper Sanctuary into play, and that whole thing is just different.
Yep.
Here's Silvergill Adept.
Jim can still win a Shaper Sanctuary game if he can get on board with Scarab God, Torrential Gearhulk, but
So
it's tougher.
He wins, instead of winning like a control deck, he wins like a mid-range deck where he doesn't run you out of cards. He actually just beats you up with some mythics.
Yeah, he can't run you out of cards, right? So he has to take that route.
I think so.
And he does have 4 Gearhulk, 2 Scarab God, so it is conceivable.
We see some sideboard cards here in Jim's hand. He's got Glintsleeve Siphoner and Contraband Kingpin, both in his hand.
I was kind of wondering about the Kingpin. I like the Siphoner a lot here. And the Kingpin does have some favorable exchanges. For example, against Silvergill Adept, it is a 1/4. It has lifelink.
I'm really hoping for Vona's Hunger. I want to see him board that in. We're thinking he probably can't get the City's Blessing on the first one, but when he Gear Hulks it back, he probably still won't have 10 permanents.
Actually,
but,
there's a second City's Blessing card on the sideboard, and the one that I do expect is in Golden Demise. That's your infest that with a Sitting Blessing, it's only your opponent's creature.
Search for Azcanta for Jim. He's debating between that and the Kingpin. I think he's a little light on lands. But here we have Shaper Sanctuary Metallic Mimic. That is the card we want to see out of the sideboard here. This should help in a big way.
Yeah, this is a card that's playable in Modern even. It's even very good as a sideboard card in Modern. Where a creature you control is a target of spell or ability and opponent controls, you draw a card. Spell or ability. Now, Jim's not going to be doing too much targeting with abilities, but he's chock full of spells.
Right. How many Golden Demise is he on here? That would be something that gets around it.
Just 1, but it is a powerful card if he can draw it.
3rd land here, put a Torrential Gearhulk into the graveyard that turn.
Yeah, it looks like you were saying, a handful of spells here for Jim. A lot of them that cost 2, so he has to choose what he wants to do on this turn.
Yeah, it looks like he's holding up Essence Scatter. Not great. On 4 mana, Ted will get a second creature. We'll start with Merfolk Branchwalker, see if that's enough to get Jim to use his counter spell.
Yeah, Jim was kind of hoping that Felicetti would play like a Kumena on this turn, and he'd be able to scatter that.
Well, he had Essence Scatter plus, it looks like Fatal Push available this turn, but now Shaper's Sanctuary is just messing that up. So Essence Scatter will take care of the Branchwalker. An attack will be for 4. And Jim, he's going to Fatal Push the Metallic Mimic, and you see Ted says, sure, draws a card of right off that.
And that's one that Jim inevitably has to answer.
Good news for Jim. Ted was hoping to hit land 4 off that Shaper Sanctuary to cast a Silvergirl Adept. He did not, so he actually just had to pass.
Interesting choice for Jim there. He had an Essence Scatter on top of the library. He chose to keep it. I think that he does have another land that was hiding in his hand, though.
Yeah, I mean, if I know
Field or Rune.
anything about these blue-black control decks, if Jim does not have a land drop, he is going to put everything that's not a land in the graveyard. He just, no option there.
Yeah, you have to make land drops. Especially in these Sanctuary games where he just needs to be casting the Scarab God and Torrential Gearhulk.
Yeah, and you think it's fair for me to refer to those like the mid-range win? You know, where he's not, he's like, all right, I can't do this card advantage thing. We're just going to play mid-range.
Yeah.
Glint Sleeve Siphoner for Jim. No real other energy sources. I don't even believe he plays
Glimmer of Genius is in the deck.
Okay, no Aether Hubs.
No hubs, yeah, the 2-color deck. It's relatively free to put it in, but the Siphoner is a sideboard card, so you don't care too much.
Ted continues to miss on lands here. He plays Silvergirl Adept and draws. He actually also looks like he's boarded in Essence Scatter in the matchup. That's some real respect for Torrential Gearhulk.
Yeah, well, we keep saying because of the Shaper Sanctuary, the Gearhulk's Jim's out for this game. The Siphoner does help a bit on that front. He will be able to get some chip shots
I need
in.
to correct myself there. He cast Merfolk Branchwalker. The Adept was already in play. Either way, Jim hit it with the Essence Scatter, and Ted, despite the Sanctuary, he's passing again without making the land drop. He'd really love to get that 4th land. His hand is full of 2-mana cards.
One thing about Shaper Sanctuary in Standard versus in Modern is in the matchups where it's good, in Modern your opponent will frequently have engineered explosives.
Yep.
Jim doesn't have anything like an answer to it on the table.
No, he can't. He just has to win through it. Which he's developing a mana advantage. So that's possible.
Bonus Hunger to the graveyard. Can't get the City's Blessing off that.
No, he's going to Gearhulk it. We have six permanents in play. He's going to have at least 8. The Gearhulk's going to be 9.
I hope it's that. I hope it's 9 exactly.
Kingpin. Okay, no. Next turn.
Boo.
Next turn, if we go land Gearhulk on Bonus Hunger, then I gotcha.
That's messed up.
Well, that's going to happen. You're in trouble. Here's Deeproot Elite revealed to Silvergirl Adept. Ted really would like to hit that land. I don't know that Jim has a Gearhulk yet. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, he has
Draws.
that one in his graveyard. I don't know if he's seen another one this game.
Is that a land? Did he get there yet? That does not look like the face of someone who's hit the land.
Nope. Yeah, a bunch of 2-mana cards and being stuck on 3 mana, that's really unfortunate.
We see Field of Ruin shooting down one of Ted's lands.
And this fixes Jim's mana a little bit.
Brian, I got a bingo square to check off here.
Yeah.
Unclaimed territory, not naming human. This means when Jim gets the City's Blessing, I'm going to win twice.
Oh, double bingo.
Yeah. You see that unclaimed territory in play for Ted. That one naming Merfolk.
That's good creature type. I can't even fault him for that. That's just correct.
It's 2 wins. 2 wins in 1 square. Jim, gonna 7th card. Here's a transformation into Escanta. Draws.
No land drop, cast Gearhulk.
No, he's got the City's Blessing.
His 6th land is the Search.
Ooh, he drew Golden Demise. He drew Golden Demise.
Okay, but he has 8 permanents currently.
Yeah,
and
but
6 mana.
He's gonna wait. He's gonna do it.
He's got to do something.
He's got Golden Demise in hand. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Don't do it, Jim. Throw one of these creatures away for no reason. Walk that Siphoner into a double block.
Ted is not double blocking. Yes, Jim. Okay. If Jim knew that Ted would make that block, yeah, he'd go for it.
What's wrong with that double block? Just because both your creatures die? That's not that bad.
You want to turn your control opponent's 2/1 into a pair of removal spells, neither of which triggers that Shaper Sanctuary.
Yeah.
I guess if that's what you're into, then sure.
You got to get something going.
No, what are you doing? What are you doing? You don't have enough permanents yet for that.
I mean, this Golden Demise is going to be on because of this.
Well, not yet. He only has 9.
Oh, wait, that one's
away.
not a permanent. Oh, I hope he just casts it.
No, it would kill his own Siphoner if he doesn't have the City's Blessing.
Yeah, that'd be a,
You can't do that to him. Look at all he's done for you.
It's made some energy. It did its job.
Also, Ted has to keep playing.
Ted found his 4th land here.
Okay. Because Jim can Glimmer into land 7, then cast Golden Demise.
Yeah, I don't think that you want to go for that play.
No, it's a fine play. Here's Silver Gold Adept and Metallic Mimic. It would be a great play. It would win. Ted would scoop. It definitely could happen. Spells on the stack don't count towards City's Blessing, do they?
All right, so we're having a rules question about Deeproot Elite interacting with Metallic Mimic. So Deeproot Elite is when a Merfolk enters the battlefield. You get a +1/+1 counter on a Merfolk, and Metallic Mimic enters the battlefield as a creature type of your choice.
So it is a Merfolk.
Yes, so you're not casting a Merfolk spell, but a Merfolk creature is entering the battlefield.
Okay, so because it triggers on end of the battlefield and not cast, it's good. He gets the counter.
Right. It still dies the Golden Demise.
So Jim has. You need a 7th. You need one more land, Jim. You need one more land.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if he has
What are you doing? What do you do?
The City's Blessing,
Okay.
then he won't kill his Siphoner, so.
Okay, upkeep. Oh, he's upkeep glimmering. He wants that untapped land.
It looks like one that does enter tapped in the top 2 here. I think
Bottom.
that's Pools.
Bottom.
I mean, he can't.
He wants the untapped land. Come on.
He can't even cast the Golden Demise if he doesn't find it because of the Glimmer. He found Swamp.
Okay, and now he can get another card off the Siphoner. Oh, I'm ready. We're ready, Jim. Bring it in. Play that land.
This is
Get that City's Blessing.
all John Rossum's fault for never
for never
activating those
that
Kashif
desert.
Oases.
Swamp. Yes.
Boo.
2 bingos. Good game.
BG.
That's right. City's Blessing has been achieved. Ted's creatures are dead. Jim's survive. They're going to attack in. They're going to win this game for him, too.
Yeah, Jim is very far ahead. Yeah, despite the Shaper Sanctuary, and Ted's mana woes did contribute a lot to that.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ted's deck is all full of things that cost 2 mana. So it's really, he had this tempo advantage on the board, but because he only had 3 lands instead of 4, he couldn't do anything with it.
Merfolk is just a deck that relies heavily on synergy and critical mass. And if you can't double spell, you just can't get that. And we see that Jungleborn Pioneer. That's going to be too little too late. Ted's leaving up 2 mana for a counter spell, but Jim has plenty on the battlefield already.
Drawing some extra cards here. Glint Sleeve Siphoner doing work. Got another Glimmer in hand. Got an Azcanta working, head on life points. Got a Fatal Push. Can't really shoot anything with it, but that's fine. I mean, he could just target the Pioneer and give Ted a card.
Yeah.
That's bad play.
If he's feeling charitable. Let's make a game of it.
You used to say, I'm feeling bad. Here, take a card and then attack him.
Reverse cycling.
That's a bad mechanic.
Discard this card. Target opponent draws a card.
And here's another swing. This is going to force some blocks, some chump blocks from Ted.
Yeah, with Ted down to 7 already, because the Siphoner has Menace, that's a good one to attack with. The Gearhulk's bigger than both these creatures combined. The Kingpin can attack freely.
Blocks there, yeah, Ted's going to go to 5.
Yeah, this is definitely Ted's best block here. The 2/2 survives after blocking the Kingpin. Anything is going to die if the Crunchful Gearhulk You block that, and the Siphoner, you don't have good blocks on that. You just go to 1. I think Jim also just has the Scarab God in his hand, but he's going to play around that counter spell.
Sure. I mean, his board's already winning. There's no real reason for him to do much more unless Ted forces it. Some more unclaimed territories from Ted. 6 mana. His own Torrential Gearhulk. That's doesn't play that.
I wasn't looking for Gearhulk. I was wondering if he had the Cyclonic Rift. What's it? The 6 mana bounce all your opponent's permanents.
River's Rebuke.
Yeah.
No.
Does not have that.
Nissa, Steward of Elements.
I mean, River's Rebuke against untapped mana and Torrential Gearhulk's not great in the
that's
first
like
place.
about I was like, I mean, Jim would probably allow it.
Yeah.
There's no situations where Jim could have a disallow and then just say yeah and pick up the creatures.
Yeah, that would not be surprising.
You has the mana to recast the Torrential Gearhulk immediately.
Yep.
So
not a bad spot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can bounce that.
Yeah, this wouldn't be the matchup for Rebuke even if Felicetti had it. It's more for your green mid-range opponents.
With Nissa on the stack, Jim's going to take some more cards. It's more energy, so he'll get a third card off that Siphoner. This one's pretty easy. I like it when you draw Glimmer off of Glimmer. That's fun.
I prefer drawing Torrential Gearhulk off of it, but the same thing.
That's a style.
That's
See,
too much.
Of how we like to play Magic. See, if this deck were playable without Torrential Gearhulks, I'd be pretty into that. If I could just Glimmer into more Glimmers, and just that was it.
Without Gearhulk, you would rather Glimmer into removal spells and counter spells usually.
I don't know. What if there's nothing I need to remove or counter yet?
This is always something. When you don't have Gearhulk, there's a lot higher pressure on actually interacting. So it's more of a removal spell that also wins the game.
What if I just want to play lands?
Then Standard might not be the format for you.
I am really into this Jim Davis deck. I want to put Arch of Arazka in it. It's bad, but I want to put it in anyway. Essence Scatter on Scarab God. Jim removes a blocker, and that's going to be game and match. Jim Davis wins in Standard. So things now even up. Standard and Modern finished. We are going to walk over to the Legacy table where Daniel Miller plays against Jody Kieth here. Miracles for Daniel Miller. He is 1-1 against Jody's lands deck.
Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of matchup where you don't really have any context for how the game's going just because it's been going along. Both of these decks are very slow.
All right, so recap here. On Daniel Miller's side, he has 6 lands in play. 5 of them are basics. Of note, he only has 1 white source, and that's a non-basic, so there's some vulnerability. But he does have Jace the Mind Sculptor all the way up to 7 and a counterbalance in place. There's a lot to like. On Jody's side, he's got a Mana Bond. He has 5 mana sources and a Thorn of Amethyst. He's got a Maze of Ith, not going to do much, and a Dark Depths that he's actually started thawing out. It's down to 9 counters.
Mm-hmm. And while Miller does not have a non-Tundra white source on the battlefield, looks like 3 uncracked fetch lands on this side there.
Oh, okay, you're right.
And Miller's at the stage of the game where he's got a full grip and has decided to start plussing Jace the Mind Sculptor, which is a strong display of strength.
Yeah, now Jody's dredged life from the loam for the turn, so we'll see exactly what... I mean, I would assume it's not too far off of him being able to set up the combo. That's unless some sort of extraction effect has gotten part of the combo out of his deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't have a look at any kind of exiled anything. Though even with the combo, very high chance that Miller has just Swords to Plowshares and can break that up.
He does have 2 surgical extractions in his sideboard, so there's the potential for it.
Mm. I believe I spot a Swords in the middle of the hand here. Bunch of blue cards and then that white card in the middle.
Yeah, just going to keep passing Jace up to 9.
Looks like Miller's just looking at discarding the hand size.
Jody will continue to thaw down Dark Depths. Daniel discards to hand size, discards a second Jace. Dredging Loam again for Jody. Is there a specific thing that he's looking for? I guess punishing fires of some sort, just to help control the Jace.
Yeah, that would stop the Jace ultimate.
Counterbalance does not hit life from the loam. With Tranquil Thicket, Jody can really go to work. Remember, he has Mana Bond, so it's possible for him to just flood the board with these lands.
Yeah, and Miller revealed Ponder to counterbalance, so that's not going to stop any of the spells that Jody's going to be casting. On the following turn, Miller could maybe Ponder to float a 2-drop and stop any life from low shenanigans on the following turn.
Player's currently on a judge call. We'll keep you on the table here for a second. Okay, I guess what happened is that there was a fast Ponder reveal. Jody had not yet declared targets for life from the loam. They're seeing if they can still give Jody targets. It is up to 3, so there's potential the judge rules because he didn't name any targets that it's a dead life from the loam.
No, that happened too quickly. There's no way that Jody has 0 targets on that. Yeah, so we'll find out exactly what's happening here.
Yeah, and this is gonna be one of those context situations. There is a table judge on the match, so our table judge will make a ruling as to what happened. So we're gonna come back to the booth while this one's discussed and appealed here. So right now we have a match completed each way. We had really this match between Jim Davis and Ted Felicetti looked so strong for blue-black control. I do want to talk about the Merfolk deck because I think we're gonna see more blue-black control. What are your thoughts on this one right now?
I like a lot of what Jim is doing here. And because of the main deck Moment of Craving, he kind of has this answer to the mono red deck that I think that Grixis is generally better than the some builds of blue-black that I've seen previously. Right. So he has a lot of bases covered there. He has a lot of counter spells, so he can beat things like the Gift of the God Pharaoh deck.
Yeah.
You can beat Approach the Second Sun pretty easily despite having these removal spells.
Yeah.
A lot of card selection available as well. You have Search for Iskanta, your Glimmer of Geniuses, copy of Hieroglyphic Illumination.
So Ted's deck, though, this is the one we just straight tribal Merfolk. What are the advantages to this? So there's a lot of aggro decks we've seen. Mono red probably being the most predominant. We saw some mono black yesterday. Why would I want to play this over one of those decks?
The argument for Merfolk is that you have some ways to generate card advantage. Silvergill Adept, Kumena, Tyrant of Araska. Those are kind of your big ones. One thing that I've noticed, I've been playing the Jim Davis Blue-White Aura deck, and that deck's kind of been getting worse as more people have gone onto Grixis, have gone onto these 4 Vraska's Contempt decks like Blue-Black. I found that the Blue-Black matchup was generally easier than Grixis because of Royal Virtuoso, because blockers are kind of a thing. But anyway, the Blue-White deck occupies a lot of the same space as the Merfolk deck, but it feels like the Merfolk deck is asking less of your opponent to beat it. Where the Merfolk deck has a lot of creatures that rely on a critical mass, whereas the blue-white deck can play tricks like Dive Down, and can play a Danto Vanguard and has a lot of natural resilience, whereas the Merfolk deck just needs to draw well to win a lot of its games.
What really felt, to me, as a weakness here is that the only 1-drop is Kumena's Speaker, and so you're just going creature on 2, creature on 3, 2 creatures on 4. If you don't have a Speaker, your curve is very fair.
And there's a couple more 1-drops you can play. The 1-mana unblockable 1/1, but it's not a very great card.
Mistcloaked Herald, a Jade Bearer. But
and Jade Bearer you can't play on turn 1. Well, you can. But it's just a 1/1.
Yeah.
That's not going to do too much for you. It makes your turn 3s a little bit better sometimes.
Okay.
But it's not a great proposition.
Yeah, but so when you have so few 1s, the issue is that your turn 3s are also, you're wasting mana on turn 1 and on turn 3 in the deck. Unless you have, I guess he does, you have 4 unsummons, which not really great on turn 1, but on turn 3, 2-drop into 2-drop unsummon, that's fine.
Yeah.
But the curve isn't completely right for the deck. You're gonna miss mana.
And you just have a lot of weak points on your curve too. You have all these 2-drops, but Silvergill Adept's the only one that actually does a reasonable job of playing as Fatal Push.
Yeah. They have Jadeborn Pioneer on 3, but that one's not selling me too hard.
Yeah, the issue is you get this hexproof token.
Cool.
But the card's just not good. You need to be able to make this token convert into something meaningful. Your ways to do that is getting a critical mass with either Kumena or with your Mistbinder.
Or a Metallic Mimic.
Yeah, Metallic Mimic as well. That one plays reasonably. You also have Deep-Root Elite, so you can kind of go off, but a lot of these just rely on your opponent just not having 2 removal spells.
Yeah, so interesting. They have made day 2 with the Merfolk deck. That matchup I did not particularly like for it, though.
Yeah, that one looked really rough. I've been beating the Merfolk deck with Sacred Cat pretty easily. You just gain
So what's
enough
your deck?
life.
This is the Aura's deck?
Yeah, Legion's Landing I've been extremely impressed with, actually.
Okay.
Games where you have 1-drop, double 1-drop, and you convert it into an extra mana source on turn 3.
That's very
It's
good.
extremely powerful. And if it's a matchup where you just want to make tokens, Geldrin Outpost used to be an extremely powerful card. And this is one that just gives you a 1/1 on the front side as well. The lifelink creatures, Sacred Cat particularly, very good against the mono red deck. So you like that.
Now that's a deck that Jim Davis actually top-8'd the Classic with last weekend.
Yes. I've made significant changes to his deck kind of as the format has shifted. For example, Adorned Pouncer is a lot worse. There's a lot more Glory Bringers, a lot more Chandra Torch of Defiance being played now, as opposed to the week 1 decks where more people were exploring with some of the new cards, kind of finding their footing. It was easier to take them by surprise with an aggressive strategy. There's a lot more reactionary stuff. Vraska's Contempt has picked up a lot, so it's harder to convert a Danto Vanguard. Seem to go heavier on cards like Dive Down. That's become a lot more of an important card for the deck.
Okay. Yeah, now Jim, did you talk with him at all about the list as to why he's not on it this weekend? He switched over to really another end of the spectrum.
I haven't had a chance to talk with Jim. I know that generally he just prefers to play control. And
Yeah.
I will say again, the blue-white deck has gotten worse over the week. It's a deck that needs... I've changed maybe almost 20 main deck cards from Jim's list.
That's almost a whole new deck.
Right. Yeah, same strategy, but yeah, you do have to change a lot, I think.
Yeah, so looking through today, if Jim Davis's team gets through here, blue-black control, I mentioned before that I kind of think this is next week's deck, in that right now Scarab God midrange is really good, and once I think people realize that, then I want to play blue-black to beat it.
So I think when you say next week's deck, there's something that I feel is a little misleading with that, because I think this deck's very good this week.
Okay.
And I think him having it this week is he's super well positioned against everything this week. What do you think he's bad against this week?
I guess my first thought would be that some of these like monster, green-red monsters decks that we're seeing, I could see Jim losing to them, whereas I think the Grixis control decks are going to be stronger. Or like against Mardu vehicles, I think Grixis midrange is stronger than blue-black control.
Yeah, not having a Braid is kind of hitting that matchup.
That's so I think the other midrange decks, the non-Scarab God midrange decks, I think right now, that's what I'd see him being weak against.
Sure. Yeah, Disallow can be a little bit slow, certainly
Right.
against vehicles.
Right. So like the way you beat those is by playing the blue mid-range decks. They're better. But then once everybody starts, like if Mardu goes down and Monsters goes down and everybody's playing Scarab God mid-range, blue mid-range decks, then Jim comes over the top and beats them all.
Yeah, and I will say playing the tempo-oriented decks, I've generally had an easier go against blue-black than I have against blue-red.
Yeah.
And it comes down largely just Whirler Virtuoso, how much time that buys you. The mana's a lot better in blue-black.
Yeah, instead of having a Braids, Jim has Sensors, extra Essence Scatters. These are going to be really good sometimes.
Right. Yeah, Sensors is the kind of card where sometimes it just doesn't do anything because they have an abundance of mana. It's relatively easy to play around. He only has 2 copies and you can cycle it, of course, but it can punish you in the early game.
So if those of you wondering why we're still back in the booth, right now we are having an extended judge call on our feature match table having to do with life in the moment. It has been appealed to the head judge here. So it's really going to, when they have a ruling on what was happened here, we'll tell you about it as soon as we know.
And then I do like Todd Stevens' approach in Modern. We talked about this a little bit. So he's playing green-black.
No splash. Instead, he has a Field of Ruins.
Right.
4.
And there's been a lot more Tron in Modern lately.
Yeah.
Than there has been probably in the last year, and even beyond that a little bit. So Field of Ruin gives you an edge there. But we've seen him just kind of missing in some of the other matchups. We've had him on camera losing to Burn.
Yeah. The problem I have here is that, okay, so I mentioned this before, that the question when you play Thoughtseize Tarmogoyf is, do you want to play red cards, white cards, or extra non-basic lands, so no splash. And I think one of them is great for beating combo, one of them is great for beating fair decks, and one of them is great for beating big mana. This is the big mana approach. So the thing is that even when big mana is up, which it is right now, we're seeing more Tron and Valakut than we normally do. I'm never really convinced that there's going to be more big mana than fair decks, for example. Even when it's the correct choice, like I have trouble being convinced that there's a meta where this is better than Abzan.
And it's certainly not a mathematical approach. It's a theoretical approach.
Right.
Where his idea is this deck still plays against fair decks.
It does.
It just doesn't play as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the nightmare of what he would want to is that if something like he played this deck and played literally against Abzan, that would be very bad.
Right. And the question you're kind of asking, so the idea is Field of Ruin is going to allow you to beat Tron. How often does that actually happen? I don't really know. So, it'd be interesting to see if Todd does a write-up. Of course, he's a writer for StarCityGames.com. I expect him to be writing something this week.
All right, we're going to bring you back to the match. So, the head judge ruling is that Daniel Miller was given a warning for revealing Ponder too early to Life from the Loam. And Life from the Loam is going to resolve, and Jody does get to pick lands to bring it back. Life from the Loam is interesting. It says up to 3 lands, so in theory, if I just say Life from the Loam and I look at you, and then I say, well, does it resolve? You can say yes. Mm-hmm. If I ask you the question, does it resolve?
Right.
Then I'm probably not getting any lands.
Yeah. There's a few things like that, certainly when you dive into Legacy,
Yeah.
where spells are very strange with resolution. For example, you don't get to know what your opponent's naming with Cabal Therapy until it has
Until
resolved.
it's happening. Same with Pithing Needle.
Yeah, don't ask them what they're naming unless you're ready to have them name it.
So it turns out, though, Daniel has it covered. After the Ponder fails to resolve, fails to counter Life from the Loam, he has a counter spell out of his hand to counter it. And now he's going for Relic of Progenitus. So Daniel Miller's in a great spot regardless, despite the fact that the judge call did not resolve the way he wanted it to.
And that time, after he used the counter spell in his hand previously on Life from the Loam. So this turn, instead of plussing, he did brainstorm with the Jace, but he certainly found something that he needed.
Yeah, and now Jody can't really dredge Life from the Loam. I mean, he could, but if he casts it, Daniel will crack Relic in response.
Yeah, Jody's kind of playing to naturally drawing Thespian stage and hoping it's good enough.
He'll have Jody exile 1 card. All right, here goes Krosan Grip.
That's going to take a while. That's not going to get the whole graveyard.
But now Daniel's using Jace to Fate Seal Jody. Jody can't really dredge Loam. He's going to start thawing out this Dark Depths. Now, Daniel, I believe, has a Swords to Plowshares.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no amount of life that you can gain that stops you from getting milled. So Jace the Mind Sculptor, the win condition of choice here.
2 more ice counters thawed off the Dark Depths.
Yeah,
Jody's got to try. I mean, there's so much going on that's hard here.
Yeah, so we didn't want to dredge Life from the Loam because of the Relic, but also Jace the Mind Sculptor just left a card on top.
Now,
so you do want to dredge for that reason.
Yeah, he did put a Punishing Fire into the graveyard, so if he could cast Life from the Loam, that would force Daniel, well, hopefully force Daniel to crack the Relic. Probably wouldn't. But in Jody's mind, he could hope, and then in response, he could nab that Punishing Fire.
Yeah, that'd be something.
Yeah, what probably will end up happening, though, is that Counterbalance will just counter the Loam.
That's the hope. And if it doesn't, Miller could just have a Brainstorm in hand, could change that equation. He also, I believe, has at least 1 copy of Predict, so he could respond to the Counterbalance trigger even if he doesn't have a Brainstorm. If it's not a 2, whatever it is, he knows it, so he gets to draw 2 cards and then reset the top of the deck.
Three mana here. What is Jody up to? Life from the Loam. Yeah, there's Thorn of Amethyst. That's why he's paying 3. He has selected 3 targets for it. Counterbalance from Daniel. Shows a 2 mana spell.
That is good for Daniel.
Yeah, and Jody's just running out of things to do here because Jace is 2 turns up using its ultimate. Uses Relic, draws that Counterbalance. Jace is going to Brainstorm. He'll wait a turn on the win there. I think he's going to want to set up the top of the deck just to be a stack of 2s.
Yeah, if he has 2-mana spells in his hand, and I believe he does.
Yeah, that makes
set
sense.
them up to have them on top.
He's playing this one pretty safe. He also has a couple brainstorms and a force of will. There's a lot of things he can do to
You can afford to play pretty safe when you have a 9-card hand.
Yeah.
Probably going to be discarding some cantrip here.
Jody's going to attempt, looks like, to get back Punishing Fire. That should crack the counterbalance, or crack the relic. Daniel's just going to let him have it.
Daniel just has 2/2s on top.
I suppose so. What's a 2-mana spell?
And on the following turn, after he draws the first 2-mana spell, he can, well, he's going to leave that up, obviously, for 1 turn cycle. He can ponder, see if there's another 2 in there. He does have at least 1 ponder hanging out in his hand, so he doesn't necessarily have to use the Jace to brainstorm.
Keeps thawing that Dark Depths. Back over to Jody, but things look pretty grim.
A handful of 2-mana spells and a Mox Diamond. Mox Diamond doesn't really play here. He would love to just draw another Krosan Grip. You see, before we came over here, there was one in his graveyard. It was exiled by the relic. So back to Miller. He's drawn his first 2-drop. Now he's got to figure out if it's time to start going for the Jace. He still has the 1/2 floating. So until he draws a card, Jody won't be able to Punishing Fire the Jace down.
Ghost Quarters away the mountain.
Daniel chooses not to search. There's a difference in some cards here. Ghost Quarter, of course, the cards that land plays. Field of Ruin actually requires both players to search and shuffle. Ghost Quarter is not. So the Jace is plus. It's set up for an ultimate on the following turn. Miller still has the 2 floating. So Jody, unless he can, well, he wants to find the combo, and his ideal setup is he gets to a point where on the following turn, he can just Punishing Fire the Jace. Once Miller has drawn this counterbalance, he just revealed the counterbalance.
Well, that's just staying on top until the Jace ultimate, so Jody can't resolve any 2-mana cards.
Staying on top until Miller's next draw step.
Right, okay, so he can wait till he draws and then...
Right. And so Jody goes for the Punishing Fire there. It's countered. That's not really a big issue. Getting the Punishing Fire back, again, he's trying to goad Miller into a mistake. He would like Miller to just crack that Relic of Progenitor Disc and get that 2 off the top. In case he has like another Punishing Fire.
Yeah, Miller not taking the bait, though.
Looks like Jody has picked up a Tireless Tracker. That would have been nice to pressure the Jace a couple turns ago.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of removal ready here. Daniel has multiple copies of Swords to Plowshares, too. Looks like 3 in hand.
Todd Stevens has some insights. I don't think that Todd has ever played lands. But he's watched Jody a lot. These two have teamed together before.
Tireless Tracker here. Daniel's going to let it resolve. Doesn't do anything anymore.
Yeah, you know there's a 2 on top too, so there's no reason to go for the counterbalance.
He doesn't really want the 2 to leave either. He's got that set up. So just keep tapping Relic. That one's not really going to matter. The Jace the Mind Sculptor is going to ultimate here.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about doing something on end step, it looks like. So we're stopping in Miller's draw step. Jody's going for Punishing Fire on the Jace, but Miller does have the Brainstorm, so that's going to put a 2 back on top.
Yeah, the counterbalance he just drew.
Team open competitors, that is time in the round. Active players must finish your turn and proceed to 5 additional turns.
And even if Jody had another Punishing Fire, wouldn't even have the mana to cast it.
Please go ahead and fill out your match list because I can turn into one of those judges nearby.
Yeah, pay 3 to 3 for those. So, Snapcaster Mage will counter the Punishing Fire. Now we are in Daniel's main phase. He gets to ultimate that Jace. So, Jody's graveyard will be gone. His hand will turn into his library. His current library will be gone. Actually, the graveyard's not gone.
Graveyard hangs around.
Graveyard sticks around. The library is gone, though.
The graveyard could be gone at any moment because of the Relic.
Graveyard is functionally gone. And there's the -12. So Jody will lose the deck. This is one of those just elaborate ways of saying win the game.
Yeah, I'm sure that people have lost when they have ultimated Jace the Mind Sculptor. I'm not one of them. I don't think I've seen it happen.
Jody thought his graveyard was exiled too.
Yeah, so it's going to be the library.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing Jody has left to do here is he can check his opponent on Swords to Plowshares. You know, he can thaw out this Merit Lage.
He can thaw the 2020. Maybe the Tireless Tracker gets there.
Yeah, this... Maybe Daniel hasn't found a Swords. Maybe Daniel, who's at 21, doesn't just unsummon the Merit Lage with Jace. It's maybe a lot of things. None of them are true. And Daniel's going to Swords away the Tireless Tracker.
Looks like Jody's picking him up.
Yeah, and they're the handshakes. So the team of Daniel Miller, Peter Tubergen, and Ted Felicetti. Ted does not win our match there in Standard. Merfolk loses 0-2, but his two teammates, they don't drop any game.